Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Simple Sounds. I feel like it's been a while since I've recorded another chapter of John. So today we're diving into John 11. So let's get started. I forgot my glasses. So let's see how we do. John 11. The death of Lazarus. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and his sister Martha. It was that Mary who anointed the Lord with a fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, Let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. These things he said, and after that he said to them, Our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up. Then his disciples said, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well. However, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought that he was speaking about taking rest in sleep. Then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. Then Thomas, who is called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, Let us also go, that we may die with him. I am the resurrection and the life. So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had joined the women around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know whatever you ask for of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrections at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Jesus and death, the last enemy. And when she had said these things, she went her way and secretly called Mary, her sister, saying, The teacher has come and is calling for you. As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and comforting her, when they saw that Mary rose up quickly and went out, followed her, saying, She is going to the tomb to weep there. Then when Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And he said, Where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, See how he loved him? And some of them said, Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? Lazarus raises from the dead. Then Jesus, again groaning in himself, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. And I know that you always hear me, but because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. Now, when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to him, Loose him and let him go. The plot to kill Jesus. Then many of the Jews who had come to Mary and had seen the things Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went away to the Pharisees and told them the things Jesus did. Then the chief of priests and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, What shall we do? For this man works many signs. If we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away our place and nation. And one of them, Caiaphas, being high priest that year, said to them, You know nothing at all, nor do you consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and not that the whole nation should perish. Now this he did not say on his own authority, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also that he would gather together in one the children of God who were scattered abroad. Then from that day on they plotted to pull him to death. Therefore, Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there into the country near the wilderness, to a city called Ephraim, and there remained with his disciples. and the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went from the country up to the Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. Then they sought Jesus and spoke among themselves as they stood in the temple, "What do you think? That he will not come to the feast?" Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a command that if anyone knew where he was, he should report it, that they might seize him. Life lesson. Jesus traveled from villages beyond the Jordan River to Bethany to raise Lazarus from the dead. Bethany was about 2 miles east of Jerusalem, and this miracle attracted the attention of many people, including the chief priests and Pharisees. As a result, the people welcomed him into Jerusalem like a king, but the Pharisees sought to kill him. Observation. Jesus knew Lazarus would die, but he showed his power by raising him from the dead. Before seeing him perform this great miracle, however, we see that Jesus was sensitive to grief and pain. Inspiration. Have you been there? Have you been called to stand at the thin line that separates the living from the dead? Have you lain awake at night listening to machines pumping air in and out of your lungs? Have you watched sickness corrode and atrophy the body of a friend? Have you lingered behind at the cemetery long after the others have left, gazing in disbelief at the mental casket that contains the body that contains the soul of the one you can't believe is gone? If so, then this canyon is not unfamiliar to you. Standing on the edge of the canyon draws all of life into perspective. What matters and what doesn't are easily distinguished. It is possible that I'm addressing someone who is walking the canyon wall. If this is the case, please read the rest of the piece very carefully. Look carefully at the scene described in John 11. In the scene, there are 2 people, Martha and Jesus. And for all practical purposes, they are the only 2 people in the universe. Her words were full of despair. If you had been there, she stares into the master's face with confused eyes. Lazarus was dead. And the one man who could have made a difference didn't. He hadn't even made it for the burial. You see, if God is God anywhere, he has to be God in the face of death. Pop psychology can deal with depression. Pep talks can deal with pessimists. Prosperity can handle hunger. But only God can deal with our ultimate dilemma, death. And only the God of the Bible has dared to stand on the canyon's edge and offer an answer. Jesus then made one of those claims that placed him either on the throne or in the asylum. "Your brother will rise again." Martha misunderstood. Who wouldn't have? "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." That wasn't what Jesus meant. Imagine the setting. Jesus has intruded on the enemy's turf. He's standing in Satan's territory, Death Canyon. His stomach turns as he smells the sulfuric stench of the ex-angel, and he winces as he hears the oppressed wails of those trapped in the prison. Satan has been here. He has violated one of God's creation. With his foot planted on the serpent's head, Jesus speaks loudly enough that his words echo off the canyon walls. "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die." John 11:25. Life confronts death and wins. The wind stops, a cloud blocks the sun, and a bird chirps in the distance while a humiliated snake slithers between the rocks. It disappears into the ground. But Jesus isn't through with Martha. With eyes locked on hers, he asks the greatest question found in Scripture, a question meant as much for you and me as for Martha. Do you believe this? This is a Kenyan question. For then we must face ourselves as we really are, rudderless humans, tail spinning towards disaster. And we are forced to see him for what he claims to be, our only hope. From God Came Near by Max Lucado. Application. Are there ways to imitate Jesus, care, and compassion for others in times of deep hurt? Responding to grief with your own emotions offers greater comfort than words. I feel bad for Jesus. Like, you could tell Jesus really, loved this man. Lazarus was a friend. He cared for him, and he wept. He felt so bad for him. But at the same time, he took control and made things happen. We don't know why certain things happen, like the reason. Maybe part of God's plan to let Lazarus live again, raised from the dead, meant that it was going to start the process of the plot to kill Jesus, which was part of the plan, was part of the plan. So it's so hard to understand, to even know what God's plan is. So when bad things happen in our lives, deaths around us happen, it's part of life, I feel we need to just open up and be ready for it. Open up, and it's part of life. And if we stay close, if we stay in a bubble, there's no room for growth. There's no room to move forward. I believe talking through all your feelings, being honest with yourself, even if you don't feel comfortable at first talking to someone, talk to the mirror. Talk to anybody in the air while you're in the car. Talk to a video like I do. All that is therapy, and I think we need to get it out. Somehow we need to get all of our feelings and issues out. So, I'm not sure where this was going, but it's cool to see that Jesus, it's good to see the character of Jesus, how much he cared for this man. He wept, he let it out, he let those feelings out. So if you're going through something like this, if you have gone through grief, try to talk to someone, or write it down in a journal, or just let it out. Don't keep it bundled up, because I know that only makes things worse. But I pray for all of you, and I'm glad to be coming back to continuing the book of John. So thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time.